Hey guys, welcome to Heck Yes with me, Carissa Woo. I'm here with my friend Paul Zakrzewski, and he is my writing coach. And a little bit of bio about him. So, since 2005, he's coached writers at all levels to overcome self limiting beliefs and publish their most important stories through the application of craft and insight. His brand new 6 months to wow draft one-on-one book coaching program helps coaches, entrepreneurs, educators, and other experts to go from zero to a completed draft of their platform building life changing book in 6 months. And he's helped me write my first book ever for wedding photographers. And I'm so excited for you to be on my show. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Carissa. That's a wonderful introduction, and it's
Did I
great
butcher your last name?
you got my last name so well. I used to actually would write in hieroglyphs Zach and then a chef, like the guy with a hat, and
Oh,
skis,
yeah.
and that was the way people got it.
Oh, that's so funny. I'll just call you Zack Attack.
Hey,
Paul
I've
Zack
actually
Attack.
used that. Yep, that was my nickname in grade school. Frightening.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so funny. Okay, so just a little bit of context for the listeners. I just told them I'm writing a book. Me and you helped me. It was through book launchers, but now you have your own thing. And we worked together for about was it a year?
I think it was about half a year. It was about 6 months.
Okay, 6 months, and you helped me from zero to now I have a full on transcript. Like I printed it out. It was a beast to write it. And honestly, like I couldn't have done it without you. I tell you this all the time, but you are a genius because I'm not a writer, and you know that and you walk me through everything and you put it all together. So I couldn't be more grateful. And you're gonna change my life, but it's not gonna come out for another like I don't know 6 months. But yeah, you're gonna change my life, or you have already.
I'm really excited for your book coming out. And just for the record, I'm not a genius, but I appreciate all the kind words. Yeah, you actually had a lot of your book. You had a lot of the bones of your book already. Actually, you're further along than the clients necessarily will be in my program now.
Oh,
So there was a lot to work with. But yeah,
that's
um,
awesome.
yeah.
How did you get started? I mean, you could tell us a little bit about your background and growing up and how you got to this point and now like launching your own business.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Canada. In fact, I was just back there, and so if house and a boat come out as I talk, that's why.
Oh.
And yeah, I've been a writer since I was a kid. Um, I loved writing. I remember trying to write and I was really obsessed with monsters as a young teen. And I remember,
Mm.
in fact, I was going to write an anthology, and I wrote to Stephen King and asked him to
Oh.
do the introduction. I still have the letter he wrote me from the early '80s. So writing was always big for
So
me.
he wrote you back.
He wrote me back. Yeah, he stopped doing that at some point in the '90s, but I have this postcard from him. It's really
Oh,
cool.
what did he say?
He said he couldn't do it, but he'd keep an eye out for my book. And I actually did end up writing or editing an anthology that came out about 2003, but it was not about monsters. It was new Jewish fiction, very different. So,
Oh, awesome. And how
yeah.
many books have you published now?
I just have that one book, and right now I'm working on a collection of essays, of personal essays about a lot of this stuff. Actually, about growing up in suburban Canada and ghosts and being the son of a Holocaust survivor,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, all sorts of different stuff is going to be in there. So yeah.
Oh, so what is this thing about monsters? Like, what do you like about them and what do you write about?
Um, well, just as a kid, I think I liked I think there were things in my life as a young kid that were scary for me that I couldn't control, but like monsters were things that I had some control over, and
Oh.
so that's partly what I end up writing about. Yeah,
Oh,
and
interesting.
yeah, and there were, it's funny in my family background, there were real monsters and ghosts, but they don't look like the ones in the movies. They were, my dad's experience obviously is in Poland in the war and things like that. So there's real historical echoes. Yeah.
Wow. Is your dad still alive?
He's not. Yeah, unfortunately,
Okay.
he passed away. Yeah.
Did he tell you all the stories about, like,
He
Holocaust?
he didn't. He had like a lot of survivors. He was on the young side, so he was what they call a child survivor. But he was rescued by a Polish Catholic woman, his nanny. And in fact,
Oh,
after he passed, I went to Poland and I met her, and then I took my son when he was about a year old to meet her. It was a really,
wow.
yeah, it was a crazy, life changing experience. To see,
Really?
yeah, just to see like that my son wouldn't have been there if it weren't for what she did. It was pretty,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
I actually have a little movie I've made about it. It's out there on YouTube.
Oh, you have to send me the link and I'll put in the show notes. That's so crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us about, like, the book that you published.
Well, I lived in New York for most of my post college life. I lived in New York or worked in New York City, and I started working in the the Jewish nonprofit world, running literary events. This is in the early 2000s. I had been in the tech industry and had been a reporter, and I started working with all these different sorts of writers,
Mhm.
and I realized that it had been a long time since there had been a collection of these new hotshot writers, and it was right after 9/11, and the first
Oh.
event I did was with someone who ended up being a really big literary agent, and so I just, I was young and hungry, and I kind of made all the connections, and
Uh-huh.
I put this book together, and I actually made enough money to pay off the rights for the book for
Oh,
the
wow.
stories,
Uh-huh.
and even buy an engagement ring for my now ex-wife. So it was a big
Oh, nice.
accomplishment. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very cool.
You got your
It,
son.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny. Publishing, we'll talk about it, has changed so much, but I would never get the advance I did then. But it was definitely a very cool introduction to publishing.
Wow, does your son, like to write too?
He writes poetry. His mom is very has been interested in poetry. So yeah, not quite the same. He's
Uh-huh.
really into NFTs,
Oh, yeah, 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 non whatever.
non fungible tokens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's like the new thing. I'm like, I
yeah.
don't care about it, but I know I should.
He likes to make money, even as a
Oh,
13-year-old. Yeah.
oh, that's awesome. Okay, so how did you get here as, like, a writing coach, and you're gonna start your new podcast? So tell us, like, everything that you did that got you here now.
Yeah. Well, in 2005, I was living in Boston, and I had taken a lot of writing classes. And as I said, I worked as reporter and different things. And I talked my way into teaching my first class. I actually had no formal teaching experience, but there is an independent writing center called Grub Street in Boston. It's actually been in the news a bunch, if the name is familiar at all. Unfortunately for them, there was this viral story in the New York Times called "Who is a Bad Art Friend?"
Uh-huh,
It's about these two women who have been kind of fighting, and there's charges of plagiarism. And kidney donation. It's kind of a crazy story, but
uh-huh,
um, not going to get into it here. But Grub, they both worked at Grub Street, and a lot of people quoted in the story are from Grub Street. So they were all over Twitter, all over the
oh, uh-huh,
media. Yeah. Anyways, so unfortunately, Grub Street got a bad name, but they were really good to me, and I started teaching there. I started teaching a lot of different sorts of people. One of my students was Juliana Hatfield, the rock star from
yeah,
the 90s. So
uh-huh,
I got really used, I started to develop the skill of giving good feedback to different people at where they were, and kind of just listening and trying to figure out what people needed, and not to impose the story I wanted them to tell, but to figure out what they were really trying to say, and to
uh-huh,
help them say it. I'd say that's where I really, and for about a dozen years I was teaching writing workshops right through
wow,
2018. Yeah, and I tried different things. I tried college admissions essays. I worked with teens, but I really like helping people who kind of, who are who are adults and who are have a story to tell. And in 2018, I got approached by someone here um, who had a pretty crazy story and was working on a book, and that's how I got my start as a book coach. I could tell
oh.
you that story.
Oh, and I can't, like, tell the audience more like how much you've helped me. I think it was like a couple of weeks we've been working together and we had our coaching call and you're like, Carissa, like you are trying to be woo woo, but you're not really woo woo, even though your last name is Woo, but you're still not woo woo. And I was like, oh my God, it's so funny that you said that because I think I was trying to be woo woo because I just, listened to like Gabby Bernstein, and I was trying so hard, but I think my success has come from just hard work and doing. Of course, it's mindset, but it was it was just funny that you got that about me, and I was like, wow, like this guy is like in my head, like you just understood me, and I just felt like your emotional intelligence was just like no other. Like I've never met anyone that could just figure me out so fast by reading like a couple chapters of my book.
That's really kind of you to say. I'd say that again, it comes from that idea of trying. It was something I had this amazing teacher in college, the woman who introduced me to personal essays, and she was
Mm.
this really kind of scary, formidable teacher. She'd gone to Oxford. She was a war refugee. She was kind of mysterious, but she really, really taught me to read for what's on the page and to respect what the author is trying to say, and not to impose my wish. And also,
Uh-huh.
she taught me the connection between writing well and living well and thinking well. And so
Mm.
those are just some of the things I just always try to bring forward, whoever I'm working with. So I'm not trying to, my background is as a literary writer, and I'm definitely what I care about a lot, but I'm not necessarily interested in turning people into literary writers. I'm really interested in helping people tell their authentic story. So in your case,
Wow.
just having worked with you, I knew that you're not a woo woo person, and so
Yeah.
that just I didn't feel like that was authentic to who you are. And more to the point, I think that a reader would pick it up, and I feel like my
Mm.
job
Mhm.
as a book coach is to help writers really connect to what the readers are going to be looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I
What
kind of
was
try to, yeah.
No, that was so powerful when you said that. I was like, wow, he's really getting me. What was like the biggest struggle like of working with me and the best part of working with me?
I've forgotten any struggle, Carissa.
It's like childbirth, like you forget the bad.
I'll take your word for it as a guy, but yeah. Um, I mean, you're very busy, and so sometimes I know that we didn't necessarily have all the time to kind of dig in as far as you and I would both want.
Mhm.
Um, my favorite things about working with you are, and they're things that I look for in really ideal clients. And this is what I was saying to you before we started the show. I really like people who have already they've already got a track record of being accomplished. That's
Mm, mhm.
because then I know that they're someone who likes to do stuff, likes to make things happen.
Mhm, mhm.
um, you really know your stuff. Like I can tell that you're a wonderful wedding photographer, but I more than that, I can tell that you're a wonderful coach because you really just know your stuff inside and out. It's like I would ask you something, I would text
Uh-huh.
you, and you would say, "Here are the 5 things to add to the chapter."
Yeah.
So
Aw, thank you. That makes me
yeah.
so happy. I can't wait for it to come out. Uh, okay, so let's see. One more question before we go into our hot topic, but how do you get heck yes from your dream clients?
So I'm working on this. It's a little new for me, but I have my own coach who's really helped me develop my offers, and he is a huge fan of this book, The Prosperous
Oh.
Coach. Do you know them?
Oh, no. I gotta get it.
Steve Chandler and Rich Litvin, and they have a process that is the one I'm using. And their idea is you're not trying to close sales, you're just trying to serve. And so the
Mhm.
idea is you're just talking to people, you're targeted people, people who have passed the threshold, who are good potentials, and you try and serve, and you just get into coaching right away, and pretty quickly if there's magic there, and if there is, they're going to want to book you.
Oh, I'm so happy you said that because I actually booked someone yesterday and I told her like, "I'm here to serve you. Like, you don't have to work with me. I'll tell you my offer at the end, but I want you to get aha moment from this call. And she got an aha moment about her niche, like bringing her architecture background with her wedding photography and like merging it together to kind of create this copy and brand to like elevate her brand and raise her prices. So because I gave her the aha moment, I was serving her, then she hired me as a coach. And yeah, I said to do that with her couples too, because they have problems. They're feeling awkward. They never done this before. Like they don't know how to pose. So they have pain too. So we're here to serve our couples and tell them like, we're the posing expert. Like you'll feel comfortable. I've danced my whole life. So it's like serve, serve, serve.
Yeah, I mean, as you can tell, I love people's stories. I love,
Hmm.
I'm always fascinated with people. People all have complicated, interesting paths, and if I can help them get that into their books and show up in their books fully, that's what I want to do. And yeah,
That's awesome. So today's hot topic,
right.
get your life-changing platform building book done in 2022. 3 tips to getting started.
Three suggestions for how to get started. One is that a lot of people who want to write books make the mistake they just start writing, and they're the people that end up kind of really getting a little lost. Not so the big one big one big takeaway I try to give people is that doing some planning ahead of time is worth its weight in gold.
Yes.
Know know what your big argument in your book is. It can take time to get that. Um, Map out your chapters. In fact, so as part of my program with people, the 6-month program, we spend at least the first month mapping out their book
Wow.
before they've written a chapter.
Yeah, we mapped out you helped me map out my book. So I think we put it into 2 segments, um like the sales and then the actual like shooting the wedding. And so like getting the leads and the sales, how you could have this like lifetime career, sustainable career. And then we also talked about like the pregame call that I have with my clients, and then the actual wedding day, how to be a best director, and pretty much like how to sell yourself at weddings and get referrals like all the time. So we kind of put together this outline, and yeah, you're right, it made it much easier to kind of conquer when we had that base outline.
I'm really glad to hear you say that. I feel like sometimes when people hear mapping out, it's like, oh, I'm not going to get my creativity out there, or it means that it's going to be boring because it's this rote thing. And nothing could be further from the truth, because actually, if you remember in your manuscript, we first broke it off into two, but I think at the end there's like at least or at least in my last edit with you, there was 3 or 4 sections, because I
Yeah.
realized that there was a whole mindset that piece at the
That's right.
beginning.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, things change. It's just like a blueprint for a house. You wouldn't build a house without a blueprint, right? But
Yes.
but in the process, you might get pretty creative inside that house. So the book's the same way. You want to have a map before you start. So that's one thing. The second thing is stories. Don't be afraid of stories. Your own story or other people's stories.
Yeah.
I had a client this year. One of the people I was also coaching alongside you, a wonderful entrepreneur who helps female entrepreneurs who have kind of lost their way a little bit. To kind of reconnect to their passion and what made them
Oh.
great entrepreneurs to start with. It's a great book. She's a
Oh.
wonderful coach. But in her book, when we were first working together, on the edges, I would see little like snippets of her story. And it was pretty clear to me that like she was the coach she was because she was exactly that person. She was writing about herself.
Oh, interesting.
And so I really encouraged her to get her story in there. We worked, I think that she felt some prohibitions against it and was feeling self conscious. And we kind of worked through some of that because there's nothing, if you're a fan of Brene Brown,
Mhm.
vulnerability is strength.
Yeah.
there's nothing better. I mean, when a friend like opens up to you and
Uh-huh.
like lets you in, then you become stronger friends, right? We
Yeah,
all had
uh-huh.
that experience, and it's the same with writing. You want to
Yes.
hear stories, and so I don't be afraid of stories. Start to think about stories as you're mapping out your book. um, there's I could go further into that I actually help writers craft scenes. I use some of my background as in different writing programs just to give some very basics about how you write a scene. You don't have to
Oh,
be Ernest Hemingway or Joan
uh-huh.
Didion or whoever, but
Do
just
you mean like scenes like a movie?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like
Okay.
you'll remember even in your book, we have little snippets of dialogue. We show a character. We kind of say like she was this and this and this.
Uh-huh.
Just anything that's going to help the reader paint a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, before I jump into tip number two, or you jump into tip number two, I wanted to ask you, like, why is writing a book life changing? I kind of know why, but I want to hear it in your words.
The books I'm largely working on are these what we call platform building books. So they're for people who most often I'm working with people who are working on their first books. And so it's going to be life changing because, first of all, just getting a book done is this amazing feat, right? It's
Uh-huh.
like being published. It just naturally confers this sense of accomplishment. I think you feel it internally, and then people around you recognize that you're a published author. So that's life changing. That's internal. And then just externally, publishing a book has all these benefits. Like you might be known as like the great wedding photographer of Orange County, say, but now you have a book out there, and you can go out and speak at on panels and at conferences,
Mm-hmm.
and the media might call you up. You've gone to what I call an authority. So you've gone
Oh,
from being an
yeah.
expert into an authority. So I feel like
Oh.
publishing a book accomplishes those things.
Oh, I like those words, expert to authority. I never
Yeah.
heard that before. Cool. I'm so excited for me to be an authority. Okay,
Yeah.
take us away with tip number two of getting started with your book.
So the first one is map out your book. The tip
Yes.
number two is stories. And
Okay.
tip number three, people sometimes are confused about how to just do a very simple chapter. And a very easy way, if you're a new writer, is tell a story, give an anecdote that somehow illustrates the point you want to make in the chapter. A chapter is usually organized around one major idea. There's one
Okay.
big idea you want to, one big kind of theme or idea you want to tackle. That's a chapter. So you try to think of some stories or examples from your own life or your clients or whatever. Use a good one to lead in, make your point, discuss, and then follow up. So those are just ways
Oh.
to organize a chapter, and we did
What was
that a
that
lot
way that
in
you
the book.
always told me, like, it was like you're going into, like, a door, and then you're kinda, like, leading into the door, and then, like, you open it, and, like, what do you find? What was that thing you would always tell me?
Oh, that's a great. That is a great metaphor. Yeah, exactly. You know, you want to a reader wants to have the experience of getting hooked in right away. On some level, we don't want to just have our medicine, right? No one wants that.
Mm, mhm,
You want
mhm.
to be entertained no matter what the thing is. And so your job as a writer, our job as writers is to entertain on some level, no matter what you're writing. And so there are techniques for that. One of them is to tell a good story. You tell a good story up front, you have your reader. They want to, especially if you then break off the story and you leave them in suspense and then make your point and you come back to the story. That's a great technique.
Oh, yeah, you used to tell me you're like you're like, "What's the story? What's the story? What's a hook? What's a hook? What's your hook?"
Yeah, so we talk a lot about hooks in with book launchers which is the company that you and I met through, but also just generally, book coaches will talk about hooks. So yeah, telling a story is a powerful way to do a hook.
Yeah, like, I think I rushed you through tip number two, the scene one. So talking more about the scenes. So are you saying like always envision like there's a movie and there's a character in your book, and like how do they like overcome something or go through something and like come out on the end, or what do they learn? Is that kind of what you mean? Or How would you like kind of envision it?
How would I explain that? Yeah,
Yeah.
not necessarily. Jot down ideas. Like if you, let's say you want to make a point. Give me an example of a point you want to make when you're helping a wedding, helping a new wedding photographer. Give me an example of a time that, think about a client and where she or he is stuck.
Kind of. Well, I would before you said stuck, but I was gonna say like you have to always be directing, like the best director, because you're really like selling yourself at a wedding. Like people think DJs are selling themselves at weddings for other people to hire them, but actually, wedding photographers too. So, at cocktail hour, I'm like looking for couples and see, you could kind of tell by body language if they're engaged. And then kind of like doing the group photo and making it super fun and being interactive with the wedding party, because if you are a good director or a really awesome director at a wedding, they'll actually ask for your number on the day of, and they're in their mind, they're like, we already want to book her because she showed up, she did a good job, we could trust her, we saw it with our own eyes. So that's a person, even if they get referrals from other people, it's like they saw it with their own eyes. So it's a very, very, very hot referral.
So I love that example because that chapter in your book was one of the first things you and I actually worked on. I think we worked on the Heck Yes phone call, and then being a director, being the best director. If you remember, right at the very beginning, we came back to that chapter a couple different times.
Uh-huh.
But it was one of your book's really big ideas. And when I think of you, I think of Carissa. Like that's one of the things she really kind of teaches people. And if you remember, I'm pretty sure I had you come up with a story at the beginning of that chapter about a time where you didn't direct people and what happened because of
Oh
that.
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yes.
you'll get, I don't know the word, but you'll get run over by the wedding party that tries to think they're a better photographer than you, by the family that they said, oh, their kids are paying this much, you better work hard. You'll get kind of oh, eaten alive. That's the word. Like eaten alive by these things. If you don't set the stage that you're a leader, like you're there to direct them. They paid you, over 5K to do your job, and you can't just, you could be photojournalistic, but that's not really my style where you're flying the wall. Like I feel like my style is very directive, and I get the shot because the wedding day goes by in a blink of an eye. So you can't just leave it to luck. You have to kind of make
Totally.
your
Yeah.
your trademark images, and these images are gonna go on the walls for generations to come. So yeah.
I have no doubt that you're someone who did something maybe wrong the first time and you learned your lesson, and I'm sure it came really naturally to you. But what was helpful about us finding that one example of when it didn't happen is that for the reader, now they don't need to tell a whole story. We don't need like a whole scene. A few sentences, a couple pieces of dialogue. That was enough for us to understand, kind of get hooked in, and then you were able to say this is what you don't want to do, and this is how you're going to lose your wedding party and you're not going to get booked.
Oh
That's all we needed
yeah.
to do. So that's what I mean by an example of a scene. So a scene
Yeah.
doesn't, a scene can be something that's really long, like in a movie or a novel, but it's just borrowing those techniques. I call them scene snippets very often. It also depends on the writer I'm working with. Some writers really want to tell long stories, and
Uh-huh.
others, like you, don't need that. There's a lot of knowledge that you want to pass back and forth. The story is just enough of a hook that the reader can picture the problem. So, especially in a book like yours, we move from problem to solution,
Mm-hmm.
because readers are coming to your book. They are in different ways stuck in their business, right? Or they're wanting to do better. And so they're aware of those limitations and they want solutions. So that's how we frame the chapters in your book.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I think I'm glad I said that, because it's like we're learning from my book about, how someone could take their stories and turn it into a book. And obviously they do need you. It's really hard to do it yourself. Mapping out, a whole chunk of a book and publishing it. But any lasting tips to how to get started? And then before we go into fun rapid fire questions?
Okay. I think that those are the three tips. Map out your
Yeah.
book. don't be afraid to tell stories, and tips for how to organize a chapter.
Yeah, I love it, I love it, I love it. Okay, so fun questions. What is the biggest accomplishment in your business or
I'm
life, I
really
guess?
the biggest, well, my biggest accomplishment, of course, is is my son. But
Yeah.
and I have a 14 and a half year old son, and I'm extremely proud of him. But
Aw.
um, uh, in my business, I'm very proud of obviously the anthology that I did, that I told you about. But more recently, I worked with a guy here in Santa Barbara, an author named John Steele, who knew Joseph Pilates, the founder of Pilates.
Yeah.
He knew Joseph Pilates in New York City back
Uh-huh.
in the 1960s. This guy, John, was a young lawyer. And once Pilates died, he helped to keep this struggling single Pilates studio alive. And so, in some ways, John is one of the few people you could say that's responsible for the enormous global success of Pilates. So, John had a
Wow.
pretty crazy story to tell, and he had a lot of a manuscript, and we started working together 3 years ago. And he published his book last year with a hybrid publisher, and it became a number one Amazon new choice, I think is what they call it. And it was the number one book in the Pilates section, and I think it has something like
Wow.
475 reviews. So I'm pretty proud of that, that coaching experience.
In what, like, headline word, like, what is a book about? Like,
What
why
is
do
his?
people read it? Yeah.
I would say people who practice Pilates and kind of want to know where it came from.
Mm. Yeah, I took, like, this workshop with Cassie Ho Blogilates for Pop Pilates. So, yeah, I love
It's
Pilates.
amazing. Yeah, it's different than yoga though, right? Yoga's been around thousands of years, and it
Yeah, I
has
don't
this
like
whole.
yoga.
Yeah.
Too
Right, but
slow.
Pilates is a really new thing, and what's interesting, people don't know this, but Pilates was like, he he was a boxer. He had a very mysterious life. We don't actually, know
Mm.
how he created
Uh-huh.
Pilates. So John tried to kind of tell this story, this hidden story of Joseph Pilates. It's pretty interesting. If people are interested in Pilates, I didn't know very much about Pilates. Again, just like I didn't know much about wedding photography. Part of what's really fun as a book coach is just getting introduced to new worlds.
Yeah, that's
I
so
guess I'm
crazy.
naturally curious, and it's really,
Yes,
I
you
love
are.
that part. Yeah.
So, how are you going to market your coaching program? Because I'm just curious because obviously I have a coaching program too. So, what are your little techniques or marketing tips you're going to do to kind of launch this whole coaching program for people?
My plan at the moment is to use. So I mentioned I work with my own coach, this
Uh-huh.
wonderful coach for creatives, who's actually based in England, and he and I
Oh,
have been working together about 6 months. His name is Mark McGinnis. I'll give him a shout out in case folks are interested. He's been really wonderful. But with together, we've come up with a kind of a three prong approach. One is just very highly targeted outreach to my network. The
okay.
people who might be working on books, or people who know people who are working on books, and so I just set up calls, and not trying to get anything out of anyone. What I actually do is, we talked about serving before, so I'll offer a free session. If I think someone, they fill out a pretty lengthy application, and then if I think they might potentially be a good match, I just invite them and I start coaching, and we see if there's a match, or we see if there's magic.
Yeah, it's cool for
Um,
you because you could actually anyone could write a book. So, I know you probably like to work with maybe different people like that you want to hear about, but since you're so broad and open to things, like literally everyone's your target market, which is an awesome thing. Mhm.
Yeah, it's funny because book coaching. Actually, there's someone I know here in town who trains book coaches, and she often encourages people to get super targeted and have niche. And it may be that eventually I just become much more niche, but for now, it's more about the kind of person, honestly, than what they're
Yeah.
writing about. I want someone who, as I said, like has done stuff. who really wants to write their platform book. But more to the point, like, are they coachable? Like, you're a very coachable
Mm,
person.
mhm.
Like, are they interested in getting better? Are they open to my hearing me? Some people are just like they have their vision. And I've worked with those people, and honestly, they're not my ideal clients. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to work with those sorts of people in the future.
Yeah, I think you call me, like, an idea machine.
You're absolutely. It's like, if I would be, if I know I helped you edit a few things, and if I would be trying to think, since I don't know the world of wedding photography, if I needed like three examples of something, I would text you or email you,
Uh-huh.
and you'd like this, give me stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Cool. So what is your woo factor? What is your Zack attack factor? What makes you stand out?
my woo factor, I'd say it's that kind of sixth sense for the story, the message that people
Yes.
are not getting on the page.
Yes.
Oh,
Dude, I
good. I'm
think that
glad
should
you
be
agree.
like your tagline, like your sixth sense for understanding people's vision and what they're trying to tell. That's a good
Oh,
little
good.
tagline for you.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna
hopefully my
steal that.
review is just gonna help you. Like, I mean, I'm sure you got it in so many reviews, but I told you, like, your emotional intelligence is just beyond.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that, Chris. It means a lot coming from you. So yeah.
Yay. Okay, so a coaching question. Um, if you had a magic wand in 3 months, where would you see your business?
In 3 months, if I had a magic wand, I'd have three new clients.
Ooh, okay. So I guess tell the audience where to find you and more about like the discovery free call that you're offering. That will be the freebie. And yeah, how to work with you.
Yeah. So, as Carissa mentioned, I just launched a new. I used to work very open ended with people, and which was fun, but could also get frustrating for both of us. And it didn't necessarily lead to to a finished book. And so I've really started to realize 6 months is just a really good amount of time to work with someone. A lot of kind of powerful things can come out of that. So it's this new 6 month to a wow draft, not or a woo draft in your case.
Woo
Uh,
wow.
woo wow.
Well done with
And
you. Well, that's a good cover title.
yeah, so if people go to pzac.info/coaching, that's where they'll
Okay.
find information. And there's an application off that. And it is a bit of a lengthy application. And I know that might frustrate some people, but it just gives me a sense that someone's kind of really in it. And
Okay.
if I think that they are going to be possibly a good match, I will invite them to a free call, and
Okay.
we'll get right down to business. We'll start talking about the book, what they're trying to do, how they're trying to change readers, and what they hope the book will accomplish for them.
Okay, cool. And do you have Instagram?
I don't have Instagram. I'm the last man in the Western civilization who does not have. Yeah, I may have to change that. I do. I am on Twitter, and yeah. I'm not a huge social media person, but that may have to change. I know, but for me, it's really about meeting people, kind of one on one. And I think
Uh-huh.
once I have a chance to coach with people, we know pretty quickly if we're a good match, and I trust that process.
Cool. And do you want to work with wedding professionals?
I want to work with anybody who has been moved or inspired by our conversation. So
Yay.
I think people energetically feel if someone's a good fit for them. So if you have a listener or listeners who, think that I can help them, I'd love to hear from them.
Yay. Thank you, Paul. I love this conversation. You are so amazing.
Thank you, Carissa. I really appreciate your time. You've been really generous, and I got to say, I can't wait to see and hold your book next year. So.
Yes, it's gonna be amazing.